Star Citizen's developers just changed who can access the test environment and when, and the community is absolutely on fire. A glance at their own homebrewed forums they call Spectrum will reveal nearly every single section is filled top to bottom with people complaining about this change, especially the concierge forums whose members are particularly aggrieved, as the first wave release has gone from a concierge $1,000 level to a concierge $25,000 level. Or you could just subscribe for $10 a month and get access, but more on that later. This isn't exactly what it seems. Still, the reactions are interesting. I'll show you some of what the community is saying in a moment, but first, let's talk about what happened. So if you don't know, Chris Wayne from CIG posted in the announcement section of the Spectrum forums yesterday how they were going to be restructuring the PTU wave releases. The PTU, if you don't know, is the public test universe for Star Citizen. This is a version of the game they release prior to what they call live, which is also technically a test environment, but that's beside the point. So they're going to be changing it from the original 4-wave structure to a new 6-wave structure. The original structure worked like this. It would first be released to Evo Kadi Flight Group, which is a small group of hand-selected players who signed an NDA. They're typically very good testers who've played the game for a long time and have shown good constructive feedback. Then it would move on to Wave 1, which is a larger group of active players by hours and people who also give good feedback, in addition to members of the subscriber community who pay 10 to 20 bucks a month, and members of the concierge community who are people who have spent over $1,000 on the game. Then it moves on to Wave 2, which is a smaller group of people who are also good testers, and then to Wave 3, which is just called Open PTU. Basically, at that point, anybody who owns the game can play the test environment. The new wave structure will begin like it did before with Evo Kadi, but the big difference is going to be the next 5 waves. The first one being now only Legatus Navium concierge level backers who are concierge backers who have paid over $25,000. That and subscribers who pay at least $10 a month, and top active players rated by hours from the previous 2 patch cycles. Following that is Wave 2 with another group of active players in addition to the Praetorian level of concierge members who've paid over $15,000. Then there'll be Wave 3, people who have paid at least $2,500 and another larger group of active players. And then finally, the base concierge level members who've only paid $1,000 back in the game will be able to access the PTU, as well as another larger group of trustworthy testers. And then of course the last wave will be Open PTU, Wave 5, where anybody with a game package will be able to test the game. And just starting off looking at the post, you can see the like to dislike ratio is pretty extreme in the favor of dislike. And there are a lot, and I mean a lot, of negative threads and replies all over the forums, but there are a couple common threads. One of them comes from the concierge community who feel particularly aggrieved, such as here Thoringer feels that he spent over $5,000 on the game, and if you count his son, a little bit more, and he feels that he shouldn't have been bumped out of Wave 1. And there are quite a few more posts like this. Like I said, there's a common thread here. And if you think the main announcement post reactions are bad, you should look at the concierge forums if you have access to it. One of the most upvoted comments in there is, "Amazing, they're taking away concierge perks and don't even have the decency to tell us," made by Watcher XP. And a lot of the reactions share the same sentiment, adding in that they think it's ridiculous that somebody can spend $10 a month and get access, whereas they have to wait till Wave 3 if they've spent $2,500, or Wave 4 if they spent $1,000. Others feel like this is a push to get more people to subscribe, a horrible marketing ploy. See what Sir Kep here says about it. He uses some pretty choice language. And of course, there are very few positive comments responding to this, having some constructive feedback on how they might better do this wave process to get the results that they're looking for. Which leads me to why they decided to do this. Chris explained that they've kept the current wave system for the past 4 years, but it's actually started to have some issues. There are a lot of people apparently who are now in these early testing phases, which has led to a really high spike in players starting off, but then a sharp drop off as the PTU lasts longer. The post was also soon followed up by Will Leverett from CIG, who went on to explain that actually 95% of the player base who check out the PTU just go on once and then never come on again, leaving them with a huge spike on the first day and a massive drop-off following that. This, as they go on to explain, is not an ideal scenario. What they want to see is a gradual building up of players who test it throughout the test cycle so that they can properly load the patches and test new ones as they arrive before eventually releasing to live. Now, all of this seems pretty reasonable, but in classic CIG fashion, they released this information quietly in the forums with little follow-up details, leaving a lot of people with questions and anger. If they had given some more context to this change, along with maybe some visual aids in a video format maybe, I think that more people would understand why they're doing it and there'd be less anger. And so let me try to do their jobs for them. And please don't take this as a defense of the way they're doing things. I'm just trying to explain it how I understand. So here's a graph that represents the current PTU patch cycle system. They start off with QA and then Evocati, which are very small groups of players who are only testing to make sure the patch isn't completely broken. And then it moves on to Wave 1, where you get this massive spike because of all the people in Wave 1, and it drops off sharply, maybe comes back up again if there's a new ship that's released in that PTU. And then you get Wave 2, and then eventually Wave 3, which again has another massive spike, and then it flatlines afterward. Like they said, this isn't what they want. What they instead want to try to get is something more like this second graph I made with their new PTU release schedule. The idea being that they're always adding more people to the PTU and loading it over a longer period of time to get better feedback for their patch releases. Comparing these two together, you can see now that there's a higher baseline with this new release, but this is speculative, it's not actual data. I'm just trying to show what they're trying to do. The important context that they probably should have given here along with this is the issues with 3.18 and 3.19, but sadly they've not even released a post-mortem yet to discuss these problems, and I think that's part of the whole issue. Just in case you don't know, 3.18 was in PTU for something like 6 months, and towards the end of that cycle, people were sick of it and weren't playing it anymore. And so even though they were trying to stress test a big feature that needed a lot of people to try it, they weren't getting the numbers that they needed. So when it released to live, it was predictably a pretty big disaster, leading to massive desync and some people not even being able to play the game for a couple weeks. Then 3.19 had a similar problem with a long PTU patch cycle and more issues with the release. And again, all of this is centering around the fact that the new tech that they're using right now, PES, which is building up to server meshing, needs people stress testing it before it goes to live. And stress testing it after every single patch, because every patch tries to resolve problems that they found in the earlier patches, and if no one's testing it, they can't make sure that the fix is actually a fix. Not being able to test this way has led to us continually having this massive player desync that we've been experiencing, up to the point where some players are just invisible and going around killing people invisible. It makes trying to play impossible with friends, and certainly impossible in any kind of competitive event like Jumptown. So with this graph and with this context, I personally understand why they're trying to do this, and I support them trying to make a change to get that effect. I think the problem is, again, communication and the fact that people have just gotten used to getting early access. A lot of people look at the PTU as a way to see their shiny new ship that they spent a lot of money on early before anybody else can, and that's not really the point of the test environment. It's literally an environment for testing, and that's how it needs to work. So their focus on not trying to cater to people who've spent a lot of money and more towards making it a proper test environment makes a lot of sense if you want the game to fix problems, which I personally do. If you think about it, it's inevitable that people are going to be angry about losing access because it necessitates them limiting who can get into the game early so that they want to play the game later. That's how they bring that curve up and make sure more people are playing towards the end of the cycle so that they can get a proper test environment done and fix the issues at hand. There are only a couple of problems the way I see it that they've not really addressed. The first one is that if they're going to still allow subscribers in Wave 1, it seems to me that they're still going to have a huge spike, especially because a lot of people in concierge have disposable income and will probably pay for that subscription. I mean, maybe it's just a marketing ploy, but it seems to be maybe a little bit counter to what they're trying to achieve, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe those subscribers will still have a huge drop off and it will still fix the curve. The other issue is that I'm not entirely convinced that this is going to fix the problem. Especially with extremely long patch testing cycles, there needs to be, in my opinion, more incentive to keep people in the game and playing it in PTU. Because right now, there is no reward for it for the majority of people. There are a top 3 selected who win some ships. This is something they started to do recently, but it's just not enough. There needs to be something that everybody can earn in some way that's made where it can't be exploited too badly. Of course, anything they make is going to be exploited in some way. Somebody's going to game the system. That's unavoidable, but if they're trying to get more testers, they need to set up some kind of reward system. Most people go back to the PU because they want to continue progressing. They want to continue earning. They don't want to have their progress reset every single patch like what happens in the PTU cycle. So say giving them some brownie points towards purchasing something on the website or getting some cool skins or a subscriber item or something for playing X number of hours, however they want to structure it, I think would do a lot more than this wave thing that they're planning on doing. Though maybe the wave thing needs to be done as well in addition to providing some rewards. But I want to know what you guys think down below. Where are you right now? Does this help quell your frustration with my explanation, or are you still frustrated with CIG's changes? If so, let me know. And if you think there should be a reward system like me, how would you structure rewards? How would you do it so it can't be too badly exploited? And would it actually encourage you to play the PTU? I've been Morphologist. If you like this video, you know what to do. See you in the next one.